All right. Have you ever been in one of those relationships where you get so brainwashed and you end up doing whatever the other person wants to do and acting out of your mind crazy? Yeah, me neither. Cool, thanks, guys. Okay, well, anyways, 5 years ago or so, I was dating this guy who I thought he was way out of my league. He was like this model actor guy. He looked like a walking Ken doll. And I feel like I'm more like a Skipper. Skipper is Barbie's younger, flat-chested, less attractive kid sister. So I felt very fortunate to be in this relationship. At the time, I had also read this book called Getting to I Do. And it was a relationship book, and the author of this book encourages women to, she gives them tips to catch a man. So she basically teaches you how to trick a guy into thinking that you are the woman for them. Now, you might become like a not true version of yourself, but at least you have a guy, right? So I was reading this book, and so I met this guy in a singing class, and I am not a singer, so that was trick number one. And then he invited me to a spiritual gathering that he was hosting in his living room. So I jumped at the opportunity. And it was a bunch of people, any religion welcome, and everybody would cram into this living room, and we would discuss the meaning of life and how we could be better people. Some people said things like, make eye contact with the cashier at Ralph's. We were changing. So I figured if I wanted to catch this guy's eye, I had to be the best person in this spiritual gathering. So I started talking to all the children who came to the gathering, because children were invited, just so he could see that one day I could be a good mother. I also spent hours on Pinterest researching how to make the most beautiful fruit platter, so that he would see that I could be a good wife and we could host wonderful parties together. And he fell for this false version of me, and I felt like I had magically manifested this relationship. Now, I like children, but if I'm at a party, I would rather talk to adults. And I can appreciate a beautiful fruit platter, but I would rather pick one up at Ralph's for $9.99 than ever slice a peach. But this guy fell for it, and I was like, oh my gosh, it worked. If I can get this guy who is like the leader of his friends to fall for me, I must be like operating at a higher level. I mean, everybody who's lived in LA has had that 1 year at least of their life where they think that anything good that happens to you is manifested by your good thoughts. And anything bad that happens to you is all from negative thoughts. I was in that year of my life. And where I thought, like, if I got a parking ticket, it was the universe telling me I needed to slow down. Now that I'm not in that phase of my life, I know a parking ticket means hurry up, your meter is running out of time. But then I thought if I sneezed, it was because I was having negative thoughts about somebody. So I really took the law of attraction thing to like an OCD area, and I felt like I was winning. So anyways, this guy, like once he fell for me, I was like, I'm gonna do whatever he thinks we should do because he is so cool, and even if this is really weird, it's cool, and I'm just learning how to be cool. And he had that like very Tom Cruise energy, not in Top Gun kind of a thing, but I mean like a very extreme, I run the most powerful cult in the world kind of energy, and I was so in. And so he was the guy that would make like intense eye contact with everybody he met. and he would ask strangers really personal, intimate questions. And you know the guy who stands on his bed to say his prayers at night before he goes to sleep? You guys know that guy, right? That was him. So one day, we'd been dating for like 6 months, and he invited me over for a silent date. Now, I had never been on a silent date, and I thought it must be something that Ken-looking people do, and I was like, okay, I'll do it. And I did have one thought that was like, this is really fucked up, but I ignored it, and I just went with it. So I got to his house, his apartment, and he had a gate code, and I couldn't remember the gate code to get into the parking lot, and I wasn't really sure how a silent date worked, like were we allowed to text, or was that off limits? So I punched in every code I could possibly think of, and then finally a neighbor came up and let me in, and I was so brainwashed by this guy that I wouldn't even talk to the neighbor. So he punched in the code, and I just like smiled and nodded like an idiot. And I went up to his apartment, and I knocked on the door, and he opened, and the silence began. Now, he was newly spiritual. So newly spiritual people are very in it. And whatever he was following was saying that he wasn't allowed to drink and he wasn't allowed to have sex. So I wasn't really sure what we were going to do on a silent date if we weren't going to drink or have sex. But I just followed along, and he led me upstairs, and he sat me down on his bed. He literally picked me up and sat me on his bed. And then we just stared at each other for a second, and I'm thinking, what the hell is happening? And then he got up and went to the bathroom, and I'm in my head, I'm like, oh my God, are we gonna have sex? I don't know what's happening. Like, he said he was really trying not to do that, so we could only do that once a month. And just when I was about to call out, hey, this is silly, we should just talk, he came back with a hairbrush, and he silently brushed my hair. And I sat there, and then he kind of gestured that it was now time for silent prayers. So we stood up on his bed, and I just like followed along, and we stood up, and then we like kneeled down, and then we like stood back up, and I watched him praying, and I was thinking that he's probably praying like for world hunger to end. And I was praying for this whole experience to end. I was also praying that he wouldn't notice that I had got my hair and makeup professionally done for this date. Then he laid me down in his bed and tucked me in like I was a child, and he fell asleep. It was a pretty short date, and I laid there thinking like, I can never, ever tell anybody that I did this. And then I also thought, should I get out of here now, or should I stay? And then I had this thought of, this is just a growing pain to getting cooler. That's why I'm feeling uncomfortable. I'll probably wake up tomorrow feeling like a different person. So I fell asleep, and then I got up the next morning to leave, and he whispered, oh, I feel so connected to you. And I was like, okay, the silence is over. And I left, and about a month later, I realized that this just wasn't the right relationship for me, and I broke up with him. I wish that were the truth. He actually broke up with me. And so he broke up with me because his psychic told him that she saw him moving in with a brunette sometime in the future. And he asked me if I had plans to dye my hair dark, and I said no. So he said, I just don't think this is the right relationship for me. It took me about a year to like come back to my senses and realize all of the crazy things I went along with. And I'm actually really glad that it happened, because I learned a lot about myself. I learned that I am the kind of person who's very susceptible to joining a cult. And I also learned that I never want to follow the tips from that book ever again, and I don't want to be an inauthentic version of myself in a relationship. That's why I never cook dinner for my fiance, and he plans all his own birthday parties, because That's just not me.